most people, the vast majority of people, buy the insurance because they recognize this is a large commitment, that insurance is going to protect me if there's a problem. And those problems can be really expensive.
Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond Podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day.
Hello. This is Jennifer J. Hammond, and I'm here with an amazing attorney who has been in the business for quite a while, Marty Stanton. So he was in the mortgage business, and then he switched over to be an attorney in the title business. So welcome, Marty.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jennifer.
I love having you because you are so passionate about educating. So one of the things that we talk about a lot is 99 ways plus that you can lose your house. And there's one way, we call it title insurance, that can actually protect you from losing your house or losing a part of your property or rights to your property. So let's start with stories. How is this true? Well, first of all, you know what? I'm sorry. Let's start with the definition. What is title insurance?
Title insurance is a policy that you pay for one time, the time that you purchase your property, and it protects you, as long as you're the owners, for the duration of your life cycle of owning the property. So it's not like homeowners insurance or life insurance where you're constantly paying a fee. You pay it once and you're done, and it protects you over the life of you owning the home.
Yeah, it's funny because it's different than car insurance or any other kind of insurance. That word insurance, people think of life insurance. There's so many different insurances, and it's such a very different kind of insurance. I almost wish it had a different word, but it is protection. It
really is. And you think about it, the purchase of real property, the purchase of your home, the place where you're going to live, you're going to maybe raise a family, or maybe it's an investment that you're going to make and you're going to rent it out to people, whatever. It's one of the largest financial decisions that you make. Normally, most people are using a loan to get it. So a lender always requires that they are insured, that their lien on the property is going to be insured. So why wouldn't you as an owner want the same benefit? You pay it one time, and if there's ever a claim, then the title insurer defends it for you. You never have to hire a lawyer. And as a lawyer, obviously, we love for people to hire us, but this is one of the reasons why I got into this business, is because essentially it's a great way to practice law and provide at the same time a great benefit for people that are celebrating, they're buying their property.
Well, and I think you snuck in a few things there for anyone who's a first-time home buyer or who just still doesn't really understand title insurance. There's two different kinds. There's the lender's title insurance, which is what the mortgage company is going to require. But then, and the reason I wanted to really have this conversation is I can't believe how many people, when they get to the settlement table and they're looking at, oh my gosh, all of these crazy numbers, and they think, oh, well, I don't need owner's title insurance. That's not important. And that's one of the reasons. So talk about the differences between that and why the owners is important for them to have for the property.
Sure, you're right. It's almost overwhelming. All the different fees that you see, whether it's on the closing disclosure from the lender, or whether it's on the ALTA, the American Land Title Association settlement statement, and all of a sudden you're looking at this one fee. And owner's title insurance is actually optional. That purchaser has the ability to take on that risk if they want to. It's most people, the vast majority of people, buy the insurance because they recognize this is a large commitment, that insurance is going to protect me if there's a problem. And those problems can be really expensive. There's actually two different types of owner's title insurance policies. There's the basic policy, which essentially covers you up to the purchase price. And then there's an enhanced policy, which is going to give you an inflationary rider and a bunch of other protections for a small fraction of an additional cost. It essentially gives you protection. It's 150% of the value when you buy, and there's other benefits as well regarding those policies. But that's going into that level of detail is probably different time than this podcast.
I was just going to say, we're going to need a whiteboard and probably a checklist to kind of go through, because otherwise we're going to really get lost in the weeds. But
That's
the
right.
difference is, you just thing to know is that owners, you have two different, you have a basic and you have an advanced policy, and you need to understand what your risks are on, which one's going to suit your needs. But again, then there's two different kinds, and that there's an owner's and then there's a lender's. So that's why I say title insurance, I feel like, is one of the most misunderstood insurances, if I can use my air quotes, that's out there. So one of the things that I said at the beginning is, let's talk stories.
Yeah.
We remember these things, even like when you go back to biblical stories, we remember stories. So let's talk about, and I hate to say, let's talk about some of the tragedies, but let's talk about some of the stories where title insurance was really key.
Sure. I'll give you a few different examples. The first, we actually had a situation where the seller conveyed property to our buyer at closing, and a few days before had actually deeded the property to a family member. They recorded that deed prior to us recording our deed. So the seller was under a contract with our buyer. The seller defrauded the transaction and actually did a deed into a family member and recorded that immediately prior to our settlement, and then went forward with the settlement, didn't tell anybody about it. So essentially the buyers thankfully purchased an owner's title insurance policy, and they were able to be defended by the title insurer in order to keep the title and pay off this seller. They had joined the seller because they defrauded the transaction. I won't go into the specifics, but the buyer just buys a property and now they don't have to worry about it at all. I'll give you another great example. We had a buyer that closed on a Friday. On Monday morning, I got a call from an attorney that said, my client had a contract with the seller and we never released them. We have filed for specific performance to buy the property that your client that you did the settlement on Friday. I'm like, oh, geez. What happened? The buyer wanted to go in and rehab the property. They purchased an enhanced policy, owner's title insurance policy. So they were able to go ahead and remodel their kitchen, the bathrooms, move on with their lives. The title insurer hired counsel, and counsel then adjoined in the seller because the seller didn't make us aware of the fact that there was an unreleased contract that was there, and eventually ended up paying off the buyer number one, if you will, who never released, for a considerable amount of money that came out of the seller. So again, the buyer buys an owner's title insurance policy. They don't have to hire counsel to litigate that problem for them. The insurer steps in and does it. And that lasted almost a year. And it was a $60,000 expense to that seller, let alone all the attorney's fees and everything else. So those are two really good examples. One where a settlement both where a settlement took place, one where the seller defrauded somebody, the other one where there was a contract, an unreleased contract, as to give you a couple of different examples.
Well, and I think it's really important with title insurance, it protects you in a bunch of different ways. And that's why I said, at the top of this show, that there's like 99 plus ways that things could go wrong. I hate to say, in real estate, and especially in buying and selling. And it's on, I think, both sides, because I've also seen it from the seller side where like there's a boundary dispute.
Sure.
So I don't know if you have any good stories about boundary disputes, but I think
boundary disputes come up all the time. I mean, most people, when they're buying, you're spending so much money when you're buying a property for many different things. Boundary disputes can come up when there's encroachments between properties, or something that's not disclosed, or something that's missed, like an easement or something like that. And those issues, that's why you want to hire a really reputable title company that's going to use great abstractors to pull the title, then good title attorneys that are going to review it and make sure that everything's in good order. The insurance comes in when something happens, either something was missed, or something gets filed in the gap, and it wasn't of record at the time. And that's why you want that insurance in place to protect you. So, another example of that would be just yesterday, one of our prior clients had purchased a property through another title company, and all of the property taxes weren't paid at the time. Now, one of the things that your title insurance policy does is it says that the current taxes are paid to date, and it doesn't take exception to that. So they reached out to us because they had no relationship with the prior title company. We're handling the sale of this property for them, and they have this back tax bill, which is over $50,000. And it turns out that essentially they went back under their title insurance policy and were able to get that insurer to cover their tax bill. So sometimes it's little things. It might be a bigger thing like an unreleased deed of trust. It could be forgery of deeds. It could be a lot of different things that you get, but even the small things matter. A few $1,000s, your policy is not going to be that much. So why wouldn't you pay for the policy in order to get the protection?
And you were talking about I know there's some examples where there are, sellers who might bring their girlfriend and say, this is the wife. And
Yes.
all of a sudden, again, like you said, fraud. It's fraud happening. But again, for whatever reason, it slipped by. I don't know, they missed the IDs or whatever part of it. And again, there's things that are unforeseen. These are the things that, by the time you go to settlement, you think everything's great, but it's kind of the gotchas, the surprises later on that you're looking for some insurance. I always say it might sound like it's expensive because I can't tell you how many buyers have said, well, that's just too expensive. And then I'm like, well, if you just have one issue, I promise you'll say it was the cheapest insurance you've ever gotten.
100%. And I would add something to that. It brings back a good story. There was a closing that I did, and this is years ago, is when I first started in the business. And the person that was sitting across from me handed me his ID, and I looked at it and I looked at him and I looked at it and I looked at him. And I just said, you're not this person.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's just like, all right, he goes, I have other forms of identification. I said, well, go, find other forms of identification. The gentleman actually the next day, because it was a late settlement, I said, bring it back in the morning. He actually came to the office after I had a meeting, came when I left, and demanded money from my staff. All right. Can you believe that?
What?
Finally, I got there, called the police. Police ended up arresting the man. And what happened here is there was a ring of people that were impersonating other people.
Wow.
And they were not showing identification. And when I was asked in my testimony to deal with this issue, they said, how did you figure this out? And I just said, I didn't figure out anything. I just looked at his driver's license and said, this isn't who you are. And so sometimes, everyone's so busy. They're going through lots of things. Real estate there can be a lot of anxiety. What the title company does, and the lawyer or the person that's conducting the closing, they always need to remain calm. They need to have a good bedside manner. They need to follow their procedures, make sure that they are very detail oriented. And ultimately what you have, and what every buyer should be aware of, is even if you have the best of the best, something can get missed. And that's what insurance is always for. We buy policies for the what if. This policy, you only have to pay once, and it protects you regarding the what ifs going forward. So it's money well spent.
It is. It's really, it's so important to understand that, again, there's different kinds of title insurance. There's the owners as well as there's the lenders. And then owners, there's two different levels. There's the basic and the enhanced. But so it depends on what it is. Because again, that's why you should read. We should, at some point, we'll grab a whiteboard and we'll do some checklists and stuff. But it's really important to understand the enhanced. Well, maybe you might even think of one. Can you think of a good story about enhanced, why enhanced is important?
Oh, sure. A great story. You talked about boundary disputes, and I didn't get through that one. We had a situation where essentially what appeared to be the property that they were buying, the seller actually had conveyed a portion of the property to a neighbor. And we had an unrecorded instrument dealing with that. And so the buyer was able to rely on their policy regarding that encroachment that was done. And that encroachments are protected under the enhanced title insurance policy versus the basic. But you may maybe you buy a condo or a different type of property where you don't have boundary disputes and you don't have those issues. So I think what's best, Jennifer, is for buyers to make a call to a reputable title insurance company, an attorney like myself, to just learn about the process, because you're going to do this only a few times in your life, most often, unless you're in the business of doing real estate like you are, of course. Okay. And therefore just take the time to have a conversation, to get information and make an informed decision. That always makes the most sense.
Well, thank you so much. And so I wanted to make sure that we tell people a little bit, your background, you started in mortgages then you just started to go to law school. So will you tell a little bit about your journey and your background?
I will. Yeah, right out of college, I started as a mortgage banker, and I loved mortgage banking. I decided to go to law school at night because I always wanted to be an attorney. It was kind of a dream of mine. And actually, I thought after that, I was probably just going to practice law, be a litigator, and do that. And then I ended up, it's funny. My wife had seen my billable hour requirements, and she said, you know what? I think you need to think about something else, because I love you too much in order to do this. And I haven't seen you for the last 3.5 years because you were going to law school at night. So long story short, I then got into the title business, and I think it was the greatest decision because I was able to leverage my knowledge of finance and then also use the law in order to be not just a practicing attorney, but also to run a business. And that's what is a lot of fun, is you get to do law, but you also get to do business in our role. So I've been doing this ever since. I've served on lots of the different committees, and things like that. I do love to teach, whether it's real estate or mortgage professionals. It's just a great industry to be a part of. I would recommend everybody to consider getting into it.
I agree 100%. And it's funny because I started when I was a teenager working for a real estate law firm doing title searches. So it's probably one of the reasons that I know so much, probably a little more than the average real estate agent. But also I'm so passionate about people understanding title insurance, because I think so often, again, they're rushing through those numbers at the end of a closing or settlement, and they just feel confused, and sometimes they don't make the best decision. I've seen that happen. And so I'm also very passionate about educating, and I just adore you. So let's find out. So if people want to get in touch with you, what is the website, phone number? How can they do that?
So certainly our website is www.kvstitle.com. My number, you can reach me, is at 301-605-1420. You can also email me at Marty, Marty, at kvstitle.com. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
Well, thank you so much. As you know, I love to end on a happy note, on a yay note. So I'm going to ask you to lift your voice and say yay with me, okay?
You got it.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Yay!
Hi, I'm Jack Canfield. You may know me as the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And if you want more help in getting from where you are to where you want to be, I want to encourage you to listen to the Jennifer Hammond Show